All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to our Note Weekend training. Honored to have everybody that's joined us live and also those that are watching on the replays. Honored to have each and every one of you. My name is Scott Carson. If you don't know me, I'm known across the country as the Note Guy. Over 20 years, it's hard to believe, over 20 years as a real estate investor. And with the last 13 of those being primarily focused on buying notes. Honored to have you all join us here for our one-day class, our Cliff Notes version of how to get started as a note investor, primarily in the distressed note space. That's what I've focused on primarily over the last 13 years. Honored to have taught thousands of other note investors out there who have gone out and done amazing things. Very proud of the fact that we've bought over $500 million in distressed debt, but also helped so many other investors do amazing things for their portfolios, their families, and their futures by becoming and diving into the distressed note space. Our Note Weekend training here is jam-packed full of information. Many of our students tell us that they get more information out of this than others. This is just a stepping stone, hopefully, on your future path as a paper in the paper side of the business, as we call paper profits. Note investing, real estate investing as a whole is not a get-rich-quick thing. It is a journey. It is a marathon, not a sprint. We believe that notes. It's great to be at the top of the food chain. It's great to be the closest to the sources, to the banks, buying notes and performing non-performing notes direct from banks, direct from institutions, without having to go through all the headache and expensive costs of direct mail. We'll show you here through our training some of the best ways to reach out to banks, how to get them to send you lists. We'll talk to you throughout the rest of the day also about how to raise capital for those deals, and then also how to make money with the different exit strategies and your team. But guys and gals, we are so excited. Like I said, it is such an amazing opportunity with what's going on in the current real estate markets here. When you look at COVID, you look at the government shutdown, you look at the nation shutdown, and the foreclosure moratoriums and the eviction moratoriums coming to an end, and people not paying their mortgage for 18 plus months. It leads to an opportunity that we have not seen the likes of 2008, 9, and 10. And we expect the next 3 years to be such an opportunity for many of us out there that are in the debt space, buying notes and either working with the borrowers to keep them in their houses or working to help them walk away. And then also you've got those investors out there that aren't going to do anything, that you've got to go the legal route to foreclose on. So 3 big things that I love about the note business right off the bat. I love the fact that we see deals in a lot larger process than most real estate investors. Most real estate investors are chasing one borrower or one property from one property owner. Well, I don't want to do that. We're chasing banks that have lists of deals that they provide on a regular basis, which is great. So we've got a lot larger deal flow if you'll do the things that I tell you to do and teach you how to connect with people. We also get much better pricing than what people are seeing in the traditional real estate markets, along or also investors out there, much better and bigger discounts, which leads to bigger returns. My third favorite thing is higher profits, higher ROIs. And an ROI is just not a return on investment dollar-wise, it's also return on investment in your time. And I think a lot of investors get in the habit of their time rotting away because they don't get a return on time. I've had many fix and flippers, many landlords that said, Scott, when it comes down to it, I'm making basically minimum wage, doing a lot of things that I'm doing. And we don't want you to make minimum wage. We make you make above average wages, above average income for you. And yes, you do have the opportunity to make 6 figures in this business if you put systems in place, if you work the numbers and understand that this is a wealth built over time. 80% of sales comes after the 5th contact. It's not just, hey, I'm going to send one email out or make one phone call and just have tons of resources. We're going to show you directly how we built a solid business over the last 14 years and how we've helped, like I said, hundreds and thousands of other investors out there go and make life-changing income for their, like I said, their family, their future, and change their destiny. So I will tell you this, there are no stupid questions. We have people join us from all across the country that are watching us, all across the world. We have had investors join us on Note Weekend or our 3-day virtual note buying workshop from a variety of different countries. Our podcast, the Note Close Show, is actually listened to in over 110 countries across this crazy little third rock from the sun. And then we also got a variety of different resources that we want you to tap into that will not only help you on your path, but help answer questions. It'll also be great resources as you go back and watch new information or as the markets change. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is providing a ton of information. And so that's what I want to focus on first. If you have not, you want to check out first and foremost, check out our Note Nation Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group just for our students. It is not open to everybody, but just exclusively to our students. It's a great place for you to go and connect with other note investors, ask questions. As you're looking at deals, if you need somebody to drive by, or you need an attorney or servicing company or a vendor, even though we'll talk about those at the end of the day at different vendors, still a great place for you to reach out to other investors, to drive by, take a look at photos, stuff like that. So the Note Nation Facebook group, our YouTube channel, WeCloseNotes.tv. That's WeCloseNotes.tv. That's one thing that you'll want to go and hit the subscribe button to. Over 1,400 different videos, podcast episodes, webinars, interviews, case studies on there. It is a wealth of information, and I will tell you, it is second to none out there in the note industry. Thirdly, basically our website, WeCloseNotes.com. That's where you'll find a list of all of our different trainings, opportunities, podcasts, and just great information and education for each and everybody out there. No matter what your price point is, whether you're taking the $49 class at your budget, or you're looking for a little bit more one-on-one hand-holding, and you are exploring our one-on-one note coaching. Out there, we're very hands-on with our one-on-one note coaching students. We've got a variety of different educational programs to help fit your budget for it. But first and foremost, like I said, I want to thank you. You're all here for a variety of reasons. Either A, to help you make more money in your side hustle, or maybe you're tired of your career or job and you want to get out of that and transition to full-time real estate investor. Maybe you're already a full-time real estate investor and you're not happy doing fix and flips. You're tired of the toilets, tenants, and trash outs of landlording. Maybe you're tired of wholesaling and getting the short end of the stick when it comes to profit margins. Look, we have so many different individuals that come into the note space from a variety of backgrounds, whether it's career-wise or investor-wise. And once you become the bank, you can do this business from anywhere. And we all know that cash flow is the name of the game, right? And that's what we're talking about over the next few hours as we go through this training, is how to, as I like to say, take the problem children, the nightmare borrowers that banks have, and turn them into your dream borrowers, where they're paying on a monthly basis and you're making a above average return depending on what you paid for the note and how you worked it out with them. Or in some cases, just paid them to walk away from the property. There's many people out there that do not need to be in homes right now because they can't afford to, because their situations have changed. So a great way to empathize with the people that are struggling, who've still not gotten back on their feet, help them walk away, help them avoid a foreclosure in the record, and still make a great large check, as I like to say, in either flipping that property, selling it, or keeping it and turning into a rental or owner finance if you want to. We've got such a variety of ways of making money in the note business. And that's what I love. The creativity about it. Each deal is a little bit different. That might freak a few engineers out there, but it is I like to sometimes say it's a create your own adventure kind of investing program. There's options for you, and you are only limited by what you can do with your mind in structuring deals, modifications, payment plans. And there's a variety of different exit strategies that you can go through with the borrowers, whether they're cooperative or non-cooperative. And what I love best and the most important thing here is that you are not alone. It is not you doing all this. You should not be doing all this. It is a very big vendor-driven business. That's what is great. So no matter whether you're brand new to real estate investing or you've got a 20-year plus career of fix and flipping or other real estate deals, you will not be doing the heavy lifting. You will be relying on servicing companies, real estate attorneys, vendors, door knockers, things like that to help you in this business. And so it really helps those out there that are brand new, that are scared about, oh my God, I got to have a lot of experience. No, we rely on our vendors who have way more experience to do the magic, to do the voodoo that we do for everybody out there. Lots of opportunity, guys. And here's one thing too, ladies and gentlemen, it is a business too that you will not be using mostly your own funds. Now, I know some people are like, oh, I have my own funds, I want to prove concept. Well, you know what? The concept's been proven. If Warren Buffett is out borrowing money or lending money to Chase or other big institutions, things like that, you can use other people's money. And there is trillions of dollars out there sitting on the sidelines, making zero to nothing, looking for opportunities that make sense, that are good deals. And that's the big thing about the note business, ladies and gentlemen, is if you are looking at what's in your checking account, you are limiting your opportunities. So you will see such amazing deals, and many people that come into the note space that don't market or raise capital, they are limited because they're not doing as many deals they could. There are so many great deals out there, and we'll show you how to raise that capital where it is truly a win-win-win across the board for you, your investors, the borrowers, and then also if you want to throw in the banks as well for you. So lots of stuff to cover on this. Like I said, there are no stupid questions. As you have questions, whether you're watching this live with me on Zoom or you're watching the replays, please feel free to ask questions. I also want you to make aware of a link that you can schedule a 30-minute phone call with me, pick my brain, ask questions, see what the next step is for you. I love hearing from my students. I encourage you to do this. If you go to talkwithscottcarson.com, that's talkwithscottcarson.com, you'll be able to schedule a call on my calendar, and we can talk. I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your experience, your background, and what you want to accomplish. And look, there's no one better to have sit down with you to walk you through kind of setting up your key performance indicators, your numbers, walking through your goals, whether you're wanting to make $1,000 extra per month or wanting to eventually making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per month. It all starts with kind of a game plan. And if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. Okay. If you're failing to plan, you're planning to fail. And as we record this, many people are going through their end of the year, first of the year planning. I know that we are here, always looking, a year out, 6 months out, what we need to do. And I will tell you right now, we are licking our chops. We're excited what's going on. We are seeing more responses from our marketing we've seen a while across LinkedIn, across email, across our phone calls and direct contact with the asset managers at banks and other personnel that sell notes. So lots of opportunity. Hopefully you're buckled in. You've got your cup of coffee, glass of tea, whatever it might be, to wet your whistle. We'll be going pretty much straightforward too. This may last 6, 7, 8 hours. It all depends on the questions I get from those as we're teaching, but we've got a lot of stuff. Like I said, it's broken up into 3 parts. The first part is about finding notes. The second part is about the funding side. And the third part is about the flipping side, the exit strategies, the vendors, that kind of stuff. And like I said, let's get rocking and rolling this morning. What do you say, everybody? Like I said, I want to welcome you here. If you don't have the manual, you'll want to open up the manual because we'll follow pretty much the manual for the most part throughout. One of the things that we've done is, like I said, the manual for Note Weekend, it's got some great information in it, got some sample forms and stuff like that for you. It is not the full thing that you'll need to be in the note business. That would be much more with our 3-day virtual note buying workshop that we host once a quarter. You can always sign up for that and get the replays to the previous event, a ticket to the next live event, and of course a download of the manual with over 200 pages. I've put in the links in the chat roll here, link to the actual Note Weekend manual for you to download. It's very easy, bit.ly/Note Weekend, all lowercase, bit.ly/Note Weekend. You can download that manual and have it to follow along with us this morning. So let's get rock and roll. What do you say? All right, as we dive into our main stuff this morning here, is get rock and roll here, the manual here. Like I said before, guys, 3 parts: finding, funding, flipping. It's kind of what we've broken things down. We'll go as long as we ask questions today. But I want you, if you're going to ask questions, please keep them relevant, keep them on point. Part of what's great about this class is you can kind of see how we've broken down sections. So you'll see we'll be moving into a different session basically every 30 minutes to an hour, roughly 14 different sessions. We will take a break here or there. But like I said, guys and gals, we're here to help you. We're honored to the fact that we're the #1 investor recommended training when it comes to note investors out there. So many students have been successful with what we teach, our no nonsense approach. I'm a big believer that if I teach you how to fish, I can feed you for a lifetime versus just giving you a deal and you feed you for a day. I'm going to show you how to really make an impact and not have to rely on anybody to find deals. You are solely responsible for your success in this. So one of the big things too are Monday night note webinars that we host most Monday nights. You can go to notenightinamerica.com. That's just notenightinamerica.com. That'll take you directly to the Zoom registration page for it, and you'll be registered for all. You can either register for one or all of them throughout the year. All right. But like I said, lots of opportunities for you to learn, lots of opportunities for you to take advantage of. And I want to make sure if you haven't jotted down my email address, it's scott@weclosenotes.com, scott@weclosenotes.com, and my cell phone number. Yes, I answer my cell phone. You'd be surprised how many times people are surprised that I actually answer my text with my phone. Like I said, when you are probably working through a deal and you need somebody to talk to, we've got our Facebook group, we've got a variety of other things, but hey, sometimes you just need to talk to the man to make sure you're doing this right. And so you can always go to my text message, leave me a message, 512-585-3810. That's 512-585-3810. So make sure you jot that down and save it in your cell phone. You never know when you'll need the lifeline on your note deals. But anyway, diving into the different types of notes. This is the big thing. Let's get into this because there's a variety of different notes. And most people, unfortunately, when they hear the term note investing, they think somebody's just owner financing a property and they're going to, their myths of that is that they're going to be on the hook for 30 years. They're not going to be able to, they can't sell the property traditionally. There's either something wrong with it title wise, or the market's kind of turns out they may owe more than the property's worth, or at the property's worth, they can't afford to pay the commissions to the realtor, so they try to owner finance it. Look, that's one small aspect of note investing. There's a variety of things. You have performing paper, you have non-performing paper, you have institutional debt, which is mortgages and loans created by banks and RMLOs, and you've got the owner finance, the non-institutional debt, which is the owner financing side, the contract for deeds, lease options, stuff like that. What we primarily focus on is the institutional debt of performing and non-performing notes direct from banks. And yes, banks will sell you notes. Yes, banks will sell you notes. You don't need to have $5 million in a bank account. You don't have to be an expert. If you know what to say and what not to say, yes, you can have banks in your list of notes today. Plus, there's also different websites out there, some different platforms, portals for you to take a look at some of the different notes available from individual investors like myself, smaller funds, or even some of the larger banks out there will sell their stuff on some of the larger exchanges like DebtX or Exchange.loans or 10X on the commercial side. But we have carved out a really solid niche here in the non-performing note space of buying strictly first lien. Yes, you have where you can buy junior liens or second liens, but that market really has dried up over the last 10 years as there's been a lot less seconds or junior liens created. Plus, with the appreciation of property over the last couple of years, many of the seconds out there are over encumbered, or they're not underwater like they once were. Now, used to be the second note space, you could buy notes at like pennies on the dollar. And one big caveat, if you're buying a second, you never want to buy a non-performing second behind a non-performing first. That's a recipe for success to get wiped out via foreclosure. You always, if you're going to buy a non-performing second, you want to be behind a performing note, performing first. And that's a little bit extra due diligence besides just on your second lien, also on the first lien of the borrower. We don't buy seconds for the most part. I mean, we have, but we've only usually bought them when they're behind our first mortgage. When we control the first lien, and we either negotiated with the second to buy at a fraction, or we were going to foreclose them out and go that route. But we've bought primarily non-performing, performing loans on residential properties, and then also on commercial properties. Actually, that's where I first started off. It was on the commercial note space, buying apartments, self-storage, small hotels, apartment complex, if I haven't said that already, mixed use. Bought a lot of small commercial debt back in 2000 to 2008, because that's really what was available first right out of the bat. The residential notes had to work their way through the banks trying to figure out what the heck they could do. But many of them were already moving their commercial notes. And commercial note investing, there's a lot of debt that's sold all across the United States on that side on a one-off basis religiously. You're not going to buy a one-off note from Bank of America, Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo on a single family home or condo. Just not going to happen with those big 4 or 5. But that doesn't mean there aren't another several thousand other lending institutions out there that have debt that they're looking to sell. And we have bought debt, we bought some one-off commercial stuff from Wells Fargo. We bought some stuff from US Bank. We've bought stuff from big names, Capital One, what's in your wallet, and their previous commercial lending side, Greenpoint Mortgage, Centerpoint Mortgage on the commercial side. We've bought from a variety of different big institutions out there. The big thing that you have to realize when you're dealing with banks, as we get to it here, is you got to pass a smell test, and we'll talk about passing the smell test. You got to look, you got to say, got to act like you know what the heck you're doing, even if you're brand new. And you know what? We all got to start somewhere. Banks will talk to you if you know what and say the things. No, you don't have to have a ton of money. The beautiful thing is, like we'll talk about how to raise capital. Banks are just more concerned that, hey, a wire shows up and that you're not going to be a complete mess. That's why it's important to have vendors. The big mistakes we see a lot of investors make is they try to do it all themselves. They try to self-service, and that is a recipe for trouble. Don't try to do everything yourself. Utilize your vendors, utilize a team, and build systems in place. Because at some point, yes, you could get away with doing the first couple deals yourself with everything, but at some point you're going to be inundated with paperwork, notices, servicing calls, especially if they're non-performing, and you're just going to get especially bogged down if you got a few. We've seen investors be able to handle roughly up to 20 notes themselves, but for the most part, when you hit that 10, 15, 20, especially if you're working a full-time job, you're definitely going to employ bringing maybe either a part-time assistant on, or really work with your servicing company to take over a lot of this stuff. But anyway, where should you focus? Ladies and gentlemen, that is a decision that you have to look at. Where are you at currently? What are your goals? What are your long-term goals? Is it cash flow? Are you looking to use notes to acquire more property? Are you in a market like, oh, I can't find any deals, but I need to find some opportunities, and I think I can find some non-performing notes that I can turn into rentals over a period of time? Yeah, you can do that. Completely up to you. Some places like in California, you may not see a lot of cash flow. It's more about property and trying to grow wealth that way, where a lot of the returns are lower in California, Arizona, Nevada, especially West Coast states, where everything's just way overpriced. Here in Austin, Texas, where I live, everything's way overpriced. I haven't bought anything here in Austin in years because I found better deals, better returns on investment in other states out there. We'll get to those states. Like I talked about return on investment. You got to look at that. Many people have money they're looking to make a good return on. Maybe it's they don't want to do it full time. They want to do it passively. So there's opportunity to buy performing notes or non-performing notes that are now reperforming that you can buy at a good yield, or to leverage other people's money to help you when you're buying non-performing, you're paying them a good return. Inventory is important. Like I said, some states are just way overpriced or a little inventory, Austin being one of those. West Coast, we get people to, I want to buy in San Diego. Well, so do I want to buy in San Diego. Doesn't mean I'm going to get a good deal there compared to buying in Ohio, Michigan, or as one of the states that I love that we see a lot of inventory, God's waiting room, Florida. All right. Pricing will vary on the value of the asset. It will vary on the foreclosure process, where they are in the default space, the underlying value, the statewide stuff in Texas. Georgia is going to go more because it is a faster foreclosure state compared to the likes of Ohio or Illinois, which can take you Illinois can take you over a year to foreclose. South Carolina is a year to foreclose. Those longer foreclosure states, you're going to get a little bit of a better discount. But on the fast foreclosure state, you pay a little bit more because it is faster, and the banks realize that. Time, you have to look at how much time. You don't need to spend 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week. If you're doing that already, you're killing yourself, and you don't need to be doing that. The note business is what's so great is you can get started on a part-time basis, 5, 10, 15 hours a week, getting started off with. There's some very easy things to do, things to get rocking and rolling. And you can do this business from anywhere. No, I do not jump on a plane and fly out and look at every asset I've ever bought. That would be ridiculous. We've closed on thousands of notes. Don't do that. I've probably looked at less than 5% of the notes that we have bought. Usually I've delegated somebody to go do that, realtor or a vendor, door knocker, friend, to go do that. You have to realize that there's vendors for just about anything. And there's a great tool called the internet. Al Gore invented, that you can use to do a lot of your due diligence and help you maximize your time. But Like I said, many investors start off doing this on the weekends, the 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. side hustle, like Gary Vaynerchuk like to said. There's a great time to do that. Now, people always ask, Scott, can I make money in this business? And the answer to that is yes, if you're willing to work it. Yes, if you have systems down. Now, one of the things that we have done over the past, hard to believe, 14 plus years of teaching other investors and diving into this is really kind of put together a systematic game plan. And many of our successful students have taken what we've shared in the video 250K in 12 months. It's kind of a basic game plan talking about how we buy non-performing notes, we work to get them reperforming. You set your plan up to get rock and roll and go from there. And how you basically, we make money 3 ways. We make money when we're buying a non-performing. If we're going to modify it, we get skin in the game from the borrowers. On the front end, we have cash flow along the way, and then if we sell the notes in the back end, we get notes that way, the money that way. So you're going to have, as I like to say, cash flow checks, pretty decent checks coming in on a regular basis. Then you also get the big check side of when you have to foreclose or take a deed in lieu and then sell the asset off. So that's the great thing. You're going to have a portfolio mixture of performing stuff or not performing, you turn into performing, then stuff that you're also foreclosing on. We're taking property back and sell that off. So it's a nice mixture of big checks and small checks. But if you're really looking to build cash flow where you can say have shut up money, where you do whatever the heck you want, I would watch 250K in 12 months because it really kind of gives you a plan of if you need $5,000 a month and you make 60 grand a year, showing you how to make it 6 figures from that point on going forward. All right. Very, very important. And here's the biggest mistake that I made early on. If you're coming from the fix and flip side, coming from your real estate investing side, the biggest mistake you can make is to say, I'm gonna sell everything. I'm gonna fix and flip everything. That's not the case. Biggest mistake I made my first 2 years in that business is I didn't modify. I didn't work with the borrowers. I was, oh, you're a deadbeat borrower. I'm just gonna foreclose. And that tied up a lot of capital for 6, 12, 24 months in buying these notes and then going to the foreclosure process that I didn't have any money coming in. If I look back, I could have modified or done trial payment plans with a lot of the borrowers and had cash flow along the way, been a lot happier with a lot less work. And my return on investment at the end would have been about the same because I would have had a performing note that I sold at the end for just as much as I would have sold and gone from there. For some rinse repeat, I had continuous cash flow and go from there. So go check it out. 250K in 12 months. There's the link for it in the manual for it as well. Now, we've talked about different states out there, judicial versus non-judicial foreclosures. The number one question I get from people, especially in those states where everything's overpriced these days, Texas, California, where there's not a lot of opportunity, is what state should I focus on? I just want to focus on the non-judicial states, Scott, because that's fast foreclosure states. That's okay, but you're going to pay a little bit more. So I always tell people, don't shy away from judicial foreclosures. The only states you should really shy away are New York, New Jersey, and Kentucky. Why Kentucky? Well, Kentucky requires you to have a $500,000 bond individually or $1 million for your business. That's a bit of an expensive bond to get right off the bat. So shy away from that until you've grown into the business. But New York is a 3-year foreclosure process. New Jersey is a 2+ year foreclosure process, unless it's a vacant asset. Then it's a bit of an expedited foreclosure process. But I would stay away from those two. You don't want to tie something up that you know right off the bat, especially in New York where the borrowers know the game. I would avoid those 2 states like the plague unless you're there, okay? And you know the specific deals and stuff like that. It's just that markets I don't want to spend time in. It's never worked out well. And then the other market I would stay away from too is, I hate to say it because I'm a big fan of their sports team. Go Cubs, go White Sox, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Bulls, is Chicago. Chicago is a rough market to foreclose in. I love the rest of Illinois, okay? I am not a fan of Cook County, as I like to say, Crook County. If you don't live in Cook County, the judges, the local governments will always side with the borrowers and extend. And so I don't like that. I've been burned too many times in Chicago, but I like other areas of Illinois. So those are really the 4 places I don't spend time in: New York, New Jersey, Kentucky, and Cook County out there. Now, if you live in Chicago, hey, like our friend Lily O'Day and a bunch of others, not a place to be. You're there, they'll work with you since you're a voter, but other places don't. So pick 3 to 5 states to start off with. Judicial, non-judicial, maybe you start off with Ohio, maybe you start off with Michigan. Those are 2 states that you'll see a lot of inventory in, which is great. More inventory you see, the more offers you can make, the better off you can go. The Carolinas, North Carolina is a non-judicial state. South Carolina is a judicial state with about a year foreclosure time frame. Florida, Missouri, Kansas. Missouri is a non-judicial foreclosure with about a 90-day foreclosure. Kansas is a judicial foreclosure, which takes about 9 to 12 months. So there's a variety of other states out there. This is one thing I would tell you to do if you're struggling with states, don't know where to begin. That's why scheduling a phone call with me is a good way to talk with it. If you've got family that you trust and like, be willing to drive by some assets, great. Maybe it's that state you look at, but there's a big variety of different states out there. Great opportunities. We buy in about 25 to 30 different states, so something to keep in mind. Question I get from a lot of people: do you need a license to do this business? And the answer to that is yes and no. It depends. And that's one question, one answer you hear me say a lot. It depends on what's going on with the situation. No, you do not need a license unless you're buying in a few states. Now, what is covered most of the time is if you have your servicing company is a licensed debt collector in that state that you're buying the note, not the state that you live in, but the state that the note is in. If they're a licensed debt collector in that state, that usually covers you. Now, there are a few stipulations. Our state, Illinois, just talking about a second ago, Illinois wants you to have a debt collector's license separately from your servicing company. Basically, you're paying the pound of flesh to the state, $750 for a 2-year debt collector's license in Illinois. You don't have to jump through any hoops. Basically, you're just paying the state, and then you've got your license to do that. That will not stop you. Not having the license won't stop you from buying. It won't stop you from foreclosure, but you may get tagged by the attorney general for operating without a license. You don't want to do that. Now, let's throw the reverse here to Georgia. Georgia wants you to have a mortgage broker's license to buy notes in Georgia. Now, if you live there, if you're buying out of state, you're fine. But if you're buying notes in Georgia, they want you to have a mortgage broker's license. The one exception, and over the years, this has changed. It used to be the attorney general there would allow you to buy 4 notes without being licensed. And it went to 1. Now it's to 0, unless, big ding ding here, unless you're using your self-directed IRA to buy the note. I don't know why the heck they make that exception, which is great. How do we get around if we're not using our self-directed IRA? We just partner with somebody who has a mortgage broker's license there, pay them 10% of the profits, the payments, stuff like that. It solves that issue. Okay. So you can find a variety of different investors out there that have that license in there. And there are other states like Oregon, Washington State. I'm drawing a blank there. Ohio wants you to have a separate license. You're buying seconds in Ohio, not for first, but just seconds. But Washington, Oregon, I believe Massachusetts is passing a law too, that they want you to have a separate license, being a debt buyer's license there beside your servicing company. I don't buy in Washington State or Oregon. It's just overly too expensive because it does on the West Coast. So most of the time, like I said, if your servicing company is licensed in that state, you'll be covered for the exception. All right. Now let's talk about what is available in today's market. Before that, somebody asks, well, Scott, how would I know on a state-by-state basis? You know what? Go to your servicing. Our friends at Madison Management have a great MadisonManagement.net. They're out of Reno. They're our servicing company that we use. There are a variety of different servicing companies there, but you can go to most servicing companies' websites to see where they're licensed in and what is required on a state-by-state basis. Madison Management has that on their website. Now let's talk about what's available in today's market. Okay. What is available in today's market? Non-performing first, contract for deeds, performing or non-performing on the contract for deed side, performing and non-performing on the residential and the commercial side. Like I said before, you don't see a lot of seconds, performing or non-performing. What you're going to see the most of, ladies and gentlemen, especially on notes, you're not going to see a traditional mortgage on an asset really at below $100,000. Below $100,000 fair market value, if they've got a note of some sort, it's usually a contract for deed that the seller has offered up. And we saw that really contract for deeds take off for the last, since 2010, when they had a lot of these lower valued REOs. There are these big funds about these big portfolios of REOs, and they offered up financing in a contract for deed. A contract for deed is a note. It's a 30-year mortgage, usually sometimes 20-year, where the borrower will put somewhere between $500 and $1,000 down. The deed actually stays in the seller's name or the property owner's name until that contract is paid off. That's why it's a contract for deed. In many states, it's a tenant relationship. So if you're buying that contract for deed near the bank, the property gets transferred to you in a deed. And then you're holding this note and you do an assignment of beneficial interest where the note is transferred to you, where in a traditional mortgage, it would be an assignment of mortgage is transferred. The deed stays in the borrower's name, not in the bank's name. But in a contract for deed, it's basically an owner finance contract, 30-year, that you're basically, depending on what the borrower put down in some states, if the borrower goes late, you have the right to evict, which is a much faster foreclosure, much faster process than foreclosure. In some states, they treat it as a mortgage, like Florida and others, that you review before closing, going through the foreclosure timeframes anyway, not an eviction. But some states like Indiana, Missouri, Michigan, these are great products because it's a pretty fast process to evict. You do see a lot of these in Ohio because of the lower values. So that's okay. It's still about a 6 to 9 month process to evict there anyway. But I've loved contract for deeds. It's a great opportunity. You'll see those rolling out there quite a bit. But what you're seeing primarily in the non-performing note space that makes sense is you're going to see assets really below $300,000, $400,000, and below that really make the most sense. Yes, you'll see some higher end stuff. You'll see up to million plus on some properties. We've got one right now that we're working on finishing the foreclosure up here for a January foreclosure. That's close to $1 million. Borrows 1.2, 1.3, something like that. But what's available is you're going to have the best opportunities in that really sub $200,000 current fair market value aspect, where the borrower owes more than the property's worth. Why? Where they're underwater? That's because there's less fight in the borrower. If you owe $225 on a $200,000 property, you're really not going to fight the bank that much to hold on to something of any type of equity. Now, flip the script. Say the house is worth $250 and they only owe $125. There's $75,000 or $125,000 in equity, or even $50,000 in equity, depending on the deal. Borrower's going to fight you for that, going to bankruptcy, foreclosure, temporary restraining orders, things like that. This is why we have a tendency to focus on over encumbered assets where they owe more than the property's worth. Not saying we don't buy notes where there's some equity. You just got to do your due diligence on the borrower and what's going on with that asset. And we'll talk a little about that later on. But you're going to have the biggest bang for the buck, the highest return on investment for your mods and reinstatements or trial payment plans, really at $200,000 below assets. And so that's what we say when we talk to banks and they're asking what we're looking for. Hey, we primarily look at assets between 50 and 500,000 in current market value. We like underwater assets, but we'll buy in most major markets. We'll even look at stuff with with their unpaid balance and the legal balance is over the value of the property. We'll talk about that in a second. But we were also on the commercial side, we're looking at small balance commercial. This is the big opportunity for folks out there. That's where we see, with everything that's gone on with the pandemic over the last 2 years, your small balance commercial notes, and by that, that's 5 million or 2 million and below. Wall Street will look at anything over 5 million, which you probably won't see or you'll be outbid on if you're trying to buy stuff like that. But that's the big opportunity, is that small balance commercial notes that many of the banks have financed for the last 10 years. And that's what's different this time around compared to 2008, 2009, and 10, the Great Recession. Is the fact that 70% of the commercial debt has been financed by your local banks versus Wall Street. So, like I said, smaller balance commercial, and then your 250 and below valued residential loans. Now, I mentioned early on before, my biggest mistake was not being a note investor back when I got started. It was that I came in with a fix and flip mindset versus a banker's mindset. And you've got to have a banker's mindset and realize that when you're buying debt, it's a different game plan. Biggest mistake that we see real estate investors make, they come in with a fix and flip mindset. Oh, I can buy this property, I can flip it and sell it. You're realizing, you have to realize you're not buying the property when you're buying the note. You're buying the debt. You're becoming the bank. And you may not ever own that asset. Actually, most of the notes we buy, some we do plan on taking back because where it's at, but I don't want to own the property. I want to own the cash flow. And that's what you have to realize. We don't look at maximum allowable offer or the ARV. We don't focus on that in the note space because we focus on as is values, not after repair value. What's the value worth right now? What do they owe? Because all you are entitled to as a note investor is what the borrower owes. Okay. If there's a ton of equity above what you're owed, you don't get that equity. You sell the note or you sell the property at the foreclosure process, you're only going to get your payoff amount. You're not getting anything above. That goes to the borrower or any other lien holders out there. That's one thing a lot of people screw up on. They start looking at this $300,000 asset where the borrower only owes $200. Oh my God, I'm going to get that $300,000. No. You're only entitled to get that $200. And that's where bidding on that $200 comes into play. You got to know that equity, and sometimes that's why equity deals don't make sense, because banks and lenders often, if there's a ton of equity, they're not going to sell that non-performing first at a big discount. They're going to come at 80, 90 cents on the dollar of either the unpaid principal balance, the UPB, or the payoff. And you've got to know, does that number make sense? And most of the times, I don't want to buy a note where I'm going to make less than a 10% return. That's not a good day. So you've got to have a banker's mindset versus fix and flip mindset. This is one of the biggest hurdles. It's okay. It's working through the numbers. It's understanding, hey, today I'm a banker. I'm buying the note, not the property. And you know what? I have to have both mindsets. I'm also a banker, knowing that then if you're also into foreclose, you got to look at the exit strategy. If I can foreclose on this, what can I sell it for? So you have to have a little bit of that mindset, understanding, hey, what's the days on market? Does it need rehab? I do not like doing rehabs. It's not worth my time to do rehabs. And this is why we also focus on owner occupied and occupied assets more so than vacant assets, because occupied assets often are cleaner. Somebody's living in them. Yeah, you may have a hoarder from time to time. Yeah, paint and carpet are probably going to need to be done. Yeah, the bars, if you evict them, you're probably going to have to do a clean out. But usually that heat is on, the water's on, the copper goblins haven't showed up, the air conditioning is, and the heating, HVAC is still there. They haven't gone on vacation or walked off the property. The electrical's still there. So one of the big things I look at occupied assets versus vacant assets. The vacant asset, I'm probably going to do some rehab. There's only a couple states that I want to do rehabs in. For my business, that's Texas and Florida, because I have the crews. I know the market's there, and I have the team in those other areas. I don't like to do heavy rehabs or even anything over $5,000 for the most part. I'll just sell the asset as is and let somebody else deal with that headache. I don't want to deal with contractors and general contractors as well. So, but that's part one. Any questions, comments about part one, or really part two? Part one is all about the different resources. Part two is about the different types of notes in your note niche out there. All right, let's move on. What do you say? We'll take breaks probably after every second or third session. We'll have some short breaks, 5-10 minute breaks, usually around noon here Central Standard Time. We'll take about a 30-minute break for you guys to get up, grab something to eat, and come back and move on. But great to see you guys all on here this morning. All right, so part three of our Note Weekend training is all about finding the deals. All right, finding note sellers, banks, websites, and platforms, stuff we're talking about here for you. So let's, there's a million ways to find note deals, and this is, can't tell you how many times I get frustrated or pissed off at people that you can't find deals. There's too many note investors. You've taught too many people. That tells me right there that somebody doesn't know how to market, or somebody's not willing to market. Yes, there are more note investors now than there was 10 years ago. There's more real estate. There's more notes. Of course, there's going to be more deals. But note investing is basically, it's still a very small niche when compared to all the other niches out there. And you just got to know how to market. We'll get to that in a second. But the places, there's so many different ways to find notes. Okay. You can find them direct from banks. There's thousands of different banks out there for you to take a large and small. Okay. Lending institutions, and these are more like we've had a lot of mortgage companies get into that are lending out money. They got in the mortgage business the last couple of years. The Alt-A, the non-QM lenders out there, they've got stuff there. Mortgage bankers who've originated notes where the borrowers have gone in default, stopped making payments, missed a payment. We bought a lot from mortgage bankers off of their warehouse lines for the last 14 plus years. Servicing companies. I mean, there's a couple hundred different servicing companies out there. You can even often reach out to the business development people at those servicing companies. They know their clients. They know who's got notes for sale or who may be looking to sell assets off their books. So even some servicing companies even have a portal for you to buy off of. All right. Conferences and conventions. Go rub elbows with other note investors. You'll find often some funds that are there selling notes. selling either one-offs or portfolios, some of the different exchanges out there. That's a great place to find some stuff, whether it's in person or a virtual conference or convention. LinkedIn, look, go type in for Note Investor. Start reaching out to Note investors out there off of LinkedIn. That's a great resource out there. We also use LinkedIn heavily to contact bankers, and we'll get to that in a second. Private sellers like myself, people that have bought notes individually. There are some exchanges out there, groups out there that have individual investors, where somebody's kind of putting the list together. We'll talk about Baldwin Advisory Group has you can join that list of note sellers or note buyers on that website here later on. I'm a big believer in going to the county clerk and looking for actual assignment of mortgages, the AOMs. That's what transfers ownership of a note. If you look at it for an assignment of mortgage and see one, you'll see that there's a note seller and a note buyer. Guess what? That's two parties right there that have notes available for sale. And we track a couple counties in the country for the different AOMs out there. Foreclosure lists are a great resource, not for the actual list of notes or list of properties going to foreclosure, but to find the attorney or smaller banks, lending institutions in your area that are foreclosing on an asset. And we use the foreclosure list to get on the bigger list that the banks have, or to go through the back door to the bank by going through the attorney and buying the note that way. It's worked out very, very brilliantly over the years for you. And as foreclosure is starting to ramp up here, and basically everywhere in the country in January will be foreclosed in every state, that's a great opportunity for you to work on. And then we've also put together a much more intense, I guess you could say, video webinar on how to find deals. So if you go to the bit.ly/finding note deals, as the link shows you there, it's a great video where it's talking to, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're talking about, a little bit more intense for you and a little bit more of an opportunity for you. If you're going to be reaching out to banks or jumping on LinkedIn to contact banks, there's basically four job titles that bankers have, or the people inside the institutions have, that handle the note sales, the debt sales. Special assets department is for your largest institutions. They'll often have departments, just maybe one for residential, one for commercial. They may have one individual in charge of the residential side and then multiple people in charge of the commercial side across the country. It just varies, but the special assets department is going to be your largest institutions. Your secondary marketing department is going to be the next size, more like your regional banks. Well, a secondary marketing department out there. Also, you have a lot of funds, hedge funds, REITs, and stuff like that. They'll have a secondary marketing department where they've bought notes and they've got a secondary marketing where the note does not meet their specifications. And let me give you an example of that. Say a big fund goes and buys a portfolio of notes. They're going to really wait. They're going to work through those assets for 90 days, figure out who's going to modify. They're going to offer up some incentives for the borrowers to modify, reinstate, or get back on track with trial payment plans. For whatever borrowers haven't responded in 90 days, they may be looking then to move that asset and sell it at 5, 10, 15, 20% markup over what they paid. So it's still a good return to them, but it's still a deal to somebody else to buy a one-off. And that may basically, they're taking that note and put it back on the secondary market. Okay. You have the whole loan sales department. Okay. This is you're going to see that in insurance companies will have that. Whole loan trading is another job title out there. You type that number in on LinkedIn, you'll find a lot of people out there, REITs, funds as well, whole loan trading, where they're usually trying to sell a portfolio of some sort. Chief Credit Risk Officer. This is a common title when you start dealing with smaller banks. We don't usually target banks that have less than 5 branches. We'll talk about how we pull those lists, but banks, oftentimes regional banks, will have a chief credit risk officer who's looking at the portfolio. Your larger and banks often will meet once a month, once a quarter to review their portfolio, what they're looking at selling, what they're interested in selling. And so when you're making a bid to a bank, don't be surprised if it takes a little while for them to come back with you on that. But the whole point is leverage LinkedIn, leverage a tool called Octopus CRM.io to help you automate your reach out and what you say to those folks. We'll get to more about what to say and what not to say here in a few minutes. Some different websites for finding notes. It's laneguide.com is a great resource. It's been around for 40 years. We use this to find internal numbers at banks to see what bank has been sold to who. Not only do we find special asset departments with this, we also find commercial stuff, cheap credit risk payoffs. Lane Guide's a great resource. I think with $185 a year, something like that, the online version. I'm using Lane Guide weekly, if not daily, in a lot of cases when we're trying to track down especially when you're targeting foreclosure lists. We use Lane Guide a lot to find the right number, or customer service number, not a the main corporate office, not the customer service number. Okay. Bauer Financial is a wealth of information. Bauer Financial is a third-party evaluating company. They evaluate credit unions and banks for how healthy they are. Every bank has to file a quarterly report with the FDIC to have that Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation coverage. And so they literally disclose, how much of their portfolio is in default, how much of it's 90 days past, how much is 30, 89 days, what percentage of the portfolio is in trouble, it's residential, commercial loans. They disclose all this in their quarterly reports. Well, Bauer Financial has made it easy for you to be able to read all those reports. You can literally go to Bauer Financial, get on the phone with them, and you can purchase lists of information, which is what we do. So we buy a quarterly report from them, and it gives us a list. We ask for we want information on banks that have 5 or more branches. Okay. Anything below 5 banks, they're going to be pretty conservative on what they sell. Most of the time, they'll probably end up taking the property back themselves in a foreclosure because they can't afford the discount. So that gives us over 1,500 lending institutions, banks across the country right there. It gives us their portfolio makeup, how much in default, what percentage of the portfolio. Like I said, residential, commercial, even multifamily percentage, dollar amount of the multifamily distress for the multifamily investors out there. Does not give us any email addresses, but it does give us the CEO's name. So we leverage that information by going to LinkedIn and finding somebody below the CEO that we can contact. It start at the top and work our way down. But it's well worth it. Once a quarter, we pay for it. It's more between $300 and $400, depending on what you're looking for. FDIC.gov, we talked about this. You can literally go to FDIC.gov, see the banks that have gone out of business for the last 10 years. You can see what banks have bought what other banks. They also have asset sales there you can take a look at and poke around with. I'm a big fan of state licensing websites because oftentimes there's a few states out there like Texas, Florida, and a few others that they have their own website and require the mortgage bankers to register with them, and then they will provide a list. Now, Texas Savings and Mortgage Lending just changed up their website recently where they don't make it as easy to download the list of all the mortgage bankers, servicing companies, and mortgage companies doing business here in Texas. We still know how to do that. It's still easy to get, but you still got to request it versus being able to get the easy download for it now. But it's literally over 4,000 names and contacts on there with names, company names, addresses, and email addresses, which makes it for an easy drip marketing campaign. We often find a lot of email addresses on laneguide.com. So laneguide.com, Texas Savings Mortgage Lending List, that alone will give you several thousand contacts for asset managers and bankers and servicing companies that you can reach out to. Other state licensing websites will often send you to the federal, I always forget how to pronounce Federal Mortgage Loan Officers listing website. That's fine. You can go there. I'm not a big fan of that because it won't let you do any mass polls. You got to search individually. There's a lot of states have gone to where they just forward people to that to do individual search. Scotsman Guide. Scotsman Guide's been around for a long time. Actually, recently spoke with the president of Scotsman Guide. Scotsman Guide's been a resource that we use as a mortgage in the past as a mortgage broker and banker, especially a broker. It would list different lending programs and what banks are lending on what, or what mortgage brokers or mortgage companies are lending on what, and what kind of classifications, both residential and commercial side. It's a great resource to go find non-QM lenders out there, servicing companies. They're also going to be doing a lot more in the distressed note space or the note investing space here. Had an interesting conversation with President Kevin over there out of Seattle, and it was nice seeing what they're going to be doing. So don't have any updates yet, but scotsmanguide.com is free. I like using Scotsman Guide because it's got a great loan kind of estimator of who would finance a specific type of commercial loan. And if you're looking for mobile home parks, RV resorts, some of that higher end stuff, it's an easy way to go over there and see who's lending on what, to find portfolio lenders and potentially reach out to those portfolio lenders for anything they have that's non-performing. There's a variety of different platforms available out there. I am not a fan of platforms, with the exception of a few. The reason for this is platforms is the lowest hanging fruit. And platform names Somebody allows a new platform, it does well for a little while. Then what happens? The platform gets saturated with crappy deals that people post on there or investors post on there with low returns, and it ends up clogging it up. And the people that are running the platform stop taking care of it. And so it gets saturated with crap or overpriced deals or bait and switch things, as I like to say. And there's some recent platforms that have gone out of business because of that or stopped listing. Like paperstack.com has about 137, different notes on there. You can still find a deal or two here and there on PaperStack. Okay, you just got to go through a lot of stuff. They've done a great job with how to buy and sell a note on there with their systemized processes, but they just don't have a lot of stuff on there. You've got to really hunt and peck to find something on there. Madison Management, from time to time, will have stuff on available for sale. You want to reach out to Kevin Cordell over there because him and his team are dealing with a lot of smaller investors out there. Our buddy Val Satir at Watermark Exchange, he's been around for about 10 years now. His website, has stuff on it you can take a look at. It's always best to reach out to Val directly, as I like to say, because Val, in the note trading space, things are constantly moving and shaking. Deals are being sold and moved. So a lot of times these websites don't get updated as often as they like to. You'll see a lot of sold. Like, well, why if it's sold, why is it on here? That's the way I look at it. Rob Hytha is a guy who has a company called Fixed Notes, where he helps people kind of fix their collateral. He's got some notes available that you take a look at. 10X is auction.com's commercial listing space. You'll find commercial notes available to bid on 10X. Auction.com doesn't have any notes. They got more REOs on that, but the two are related. Mission Capital Advisors. This and DebtX are two of the big boys out there. That some of the banks have posted stuff on there. They've got a qualification process. You usually got to pay a fee. I think DebtX is $500 to get registered with them to look at what they have. You're not going to be buying from Mission Capital Advisors or DebtX to begin with. They're usually trading large portfolios. It's a great way to look at, but most of the time you're going to be buying individually one-off from some of the different platforms, some different funds, or buying direct from banks out there. Then you have Note Trader Exchange. It's a company out of San Diego. They sell notes on an individual basis. I have never bought from them, but I put it out there just so you know. And there's a variety of different little individual hedge funds here and there that have stuff available that are in and out of business as we go. Okay. But the beautiful thing on this, ladies and gentlemen, is compared to traditional real estate investors where people are sending out 50, 100, or postcards, letters a week, or thousands. I've got some people in the real estate space that are spending upwards of $10,000 a month on direct mail campaigns to get a 1 to 4% response rate. We don't do any direct mail to find deals. No, I don't send out letters to owner finance owners of owner finance notes. It's not worth my time. I'd rather go direct to the banks where I can get a list every month, every quarter, and go from there. So if you've got internet, okay, and you can type an email or you can pick up the phone and dial, you'll find the most amount of deals by going that route. Okay. Don't get in the habit of sending postcards. The only direct mail we do is sending out to IRA investors or to potential private investors. That's the only direct mail we do. And that's not even on a regular basis, because once you've raised capital, you often don't need to go back and re-raise it and go from there. Okay. But that's the thing, going direct to the banks, going direct to the funds. We'll talk about what to say, what not to say here in a few minutes. Let's do this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a quick 6-minute break. Let's get up, stretch, go get a cup of coffee before we dive into note scripts, part 4, 5, and 6. So we'll take a quick bio break for you real fast. Be right back. All right, everybody. Let's jump on over to our part 4 of what to say, what not to say when talking to bankers, or how to get people to say yes to send you lists. Now, here's the biggest thing. We talked about earlier about the 4 job titles that you want to reach out to on LinkedIn or when calling banks, calling the main corporate office. Never call the customer service number. It's a waste of time. Okay. Those people are in a call center. They don't know anything about selling notes. They're all about loss mitigation. They're all about getting the bar back on track. Like they don't know about note sales. It's a dead end. Another big thing too is when you're reaching out, never say you're looking for notes and REOs. We'll talk about that in a second. Don't even mention the REO department because that's a dead giveaway where they'll send you to the REO department and it's basically a voicemail box. You won't get a phone call back. All right. You're not chasing REOs. You're in the note space. This isn't REO weekend. This is note weekend. Okay. When it comes down to it. So keep that in mind. You want to be specific. You're looking for non-performing notes, residential, commercial stuff, the small balance commercial stuff, your residential loans below $500,000 in UPB or value. Okay. And when you get the person finally, or when you're leaving a voice message, you're going to have a basic elevator pitch. It's pretty simple. We've got more advanced scripts in our 3-day class, but I share this with you because I know some of you are going to like, oh, I can do this myself. One big thing is you're not going to walk down to the local Wells Fargo, your local bank, and say, I'm going to buy notes. This guy I taught a class Saturday says I can buy notes. When I was a banker for JP Morgan Chase, I had a few people walk. I was like, I had no clue. Oh, we don't sell our debt. Well, every bank sells their debt. It's whether they're going to sell it to you. Okay. But you're often, those people, the vice presidents, really have no power. How do I know this? Because I once was a VP for Chase. Okay. It just means I was a bank manager for the most part. But anyway, basic elevator pitch. What do you have in your books that you're looking to move? All right. I'm looking for my own portfolio. I don't care if you're looking to wholesale, okay, or looking to flip. Never say that. Okay. Say I'm looking to buy for my own portfolio. I'm looking for something with some hair on it. What does that mean? It means, it may have some ugly borrowers. It may have some issues. That's okay. That's an opportunity for you to pick up an asset at a big discount. We're looking to work it out with the homeowners. That's one thing that bankers love to hear. Hey, we've got a servicing company. We've got our attorneys, but we're trying to modify, trying to work with local groups because there are a lot of different funds available now at state levels, or also organizations that will help borrowers get back on track. The banks just don't have the manpower, the strength to try to identify all that stuff with their distressed debt, like we saw back earlier on 13 years ago. They're trying to collect, not necessarily trying to help. Okay. We're looking for non-performing notes with values of over, $100,000 in these markets or states. Now, you never want to specific down to cities or zip codes. The narrow it down where I'm only buying in Austin, Texas, or, only in Columbus, Ohio, that's not a good thing. The whole goal here, ladies and gentlemen, is when you get that fish on the hook, that asset manager, you don't want to narrow it down to this minute. You want to make it very easy for he or her to simply send you their PDF or their Excel sheet of their portfolio. You can then siphon it down or narrow it down to states and cities that you like. But say we're buying it most of the major markets out there is what we say. Most of the major primary and secondary markets, or the major metroplexes across the country we're buying in. It's a pretty easy thing. Now, do not, and I repeat, do not say these things. This is a dead giveaway that you will get in trouble, and you're not really looking for notes. You're going to get in trouble this way, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Don't say this stuff. All right? You call me up. Well, Scott, I said this, and be like, you're an idiot. You didn't listen. Okay? Do not say I'm looking for notes and REOs. You're looking specifically for notes. Okay? Don't say REO. Like I said, kick that to the curb. Like I said, you'll just get buried, and all you have plenty of. If you want to do that, contact a listing agent. Okay? Or say I'm looking to broker or wholesale. Don't say that. That's a dead giveaway. They don't need brokers. They don't need wholesalers. Bankers want to deal with buyers, not brokers. Okay? Or wholesalers. Now, this is why when you say I'm buying for my own portfolio, if you are looking to wholesale, you still say I'm looking for my own portfolio. I don't care. It may be only on your portfolio for 5 seconds. Okay? But you're always looking for your own portfolio. Do not say I represent a buyer. I'm a seller's rep. Do not say that. I had 2 guys call me like 2 weeks ago. Hey, we represent a seller's, you're doing 5 million a month. That's great. You're not going to buy from me. You're not going to buy. I'm not going to sell it to you because I'm not going to deal with joker brokers. Look, if somebody's got 20 million a month or whatever they say a month, they're not going to be dealing with you or me. They're going to be going directly to Wall Street or institutional sellers. And one of the great things I ask people when I get somebody like that on the phone, I say, well, great. Before I even reach out to the banks, I need to see a copy of your QIB form. A QIB form. Now, what does a QIB form stand for? That stands for qualified institutional buyer. Okay. Somebody's got 20 million to buy. They're going to need to have a qualified institutional buyer. Every bank's going to ask that. And if they don't know that, never heard of that, you're dealing with a joker broker. It's not worth it. And look, if you're that person who's trying to find a big whale or you're representing a whale, do yourself a favor. Cut them loose because they're not going to pay you what you're worth. You're going to make more money and have more fun going out and buying for your own portfolio versus trying to land a $5 million portfolio where you get 1 point maybe. Okay, that's 50 grand. That's great. But you can make a lot more wealth buying assets for yourself and going out and raising capital and having your investor fund the deals for you and give them a good return as well. Okay. Don't say I'm looking for anything. I mean, I'm just give me everything you got. That's not a good sign that, what are you looking for? A little bit more specific, better. Okay. Like I said, don't mention a specific city or zip code. It's okay to say, look, I love Texas, but I know you're probably not going to have anything in Texas. That's where I have. So I'll look at just about anywhere for the most part. And like I said, don't say come across and say you've got 20 million a month to buy, because if you had 20 million a month to buy stuff, you sure as hell wouldn't be on the phone. You'd have some person down the ladder making phone calls for you. Now it's okay to say, hey, I got $250,000 to $1 million in private funds that I can invest. It's also okay to say I'm relatively new at this, but I've got a track record of buying in the distressed asset space, or I've been an actual real estate investor for years. That's okay. We all got to start somewhere, but just don't make those mistakes by saying that stuff. Now, many people are working full time. They don't have the time to dial for dollars, pick up the phone during the day. So you're going to be emailing or sending emails out that you can pre-write or pre-schedule through MailChimp or Keep or anything like that. The best time is the email, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going to send an email blast out to lists you pulled off of Lane Guide or Texas Savings and Mortgage Lending Department or any other websites, or even reaching out on LinkedIn to asset managers, is send it out on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Don't send an email Monday. Don't send it at night. Send it at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. for the most part. Okay, now 3 p.m., that would be primarily before 3 p.m. I'd say by 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, because that's 1 o'clock on the West Coast. It's 4 o'clock on the East Coast. I prefer to try to get it out by 2 o'clock, so I'm kind of hitting most, because most of the time, if you've got a list, it's going to have people from different time zones, right? Unless you break that list down by time zone, which you can with MailChimp allows for you. It's a paid feature with MailChimp to send it out by the time zone. But most of the time, you're going to send one email, blast out. That's what we do to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 asset managers. And, that's when we want to send it out. Now, you'll see about a 10 to 20% open rate the first time you send an email out to asset managers. It just happens. That's what happens. 10 to 20%. That's pretty normal in real estate. Real estate's about a 17% open rate for asset managers. What you do not want to do is just send one email and never do anything with it, which is what most people do. Okay. Woo, I'm gonna send an email to asset managers and they never do anything after that. Don't do that. It's a waste of time. Okay. 80% of sales comes after the 5th contact, ladies and gentlemen. It's a rule. Okay. It just is what it is. Realize it's going to take you time. So you send your first email out on a Tuesday. We then send a second email out. Okay. The second email goes out 48 hours later. So we send it on a Tuesday. We send the next one on a Thursday. Okay. So we send it Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock. We send the Thursday one at 2 p.m. And we send it the same exact email, but we send it to those that didn't open the first round. Okay. Now, those that open, we will send, hey, saw that you opened our email. I'd love to schedule a talk. It's a much shorter email that goes to it. But the whole idea here is to get the emails open, start building some rapport with these people. I've had asset managers that have called me up or emailed me after 6, 12, sometimes years of getting, as they say, my green email, because everything's green on it, because that's my logo. It's branded into them that way. And they've got something that they're now willing to sell. But that's the idea, is that you just keep, it's a simple drip marketing campaign. It takes a little bit of time to set it up. You're going to take about an hour and I don't, depending on what your MailChimp or CRM proficiency is of setting up your template and sending out. You want to keep it short and sweet. You want your emails to be less than 20 lines of text. You don't want to have your social media, subscribe, or any of that stuff. You want to be a pretty professional. Maybe your logo and a photo of you smiling on there, and then a little bit, hey, what you're looking for, keep it short and sweet, and send it out. But you'll get about like I said, 10 to 20% the first time emailing out on a Tuesday, or somewhere about a 5 to 8, sometimes 10% on the second email. And then what we do is we send a third email. So remember, Tuesday, Thursday, then we send the third email, still to those that didn't open, on that next Tuesday at a different time. So I sent it Tuesday at 11 a.m. I would send it the next Tuesday in the afternoon, say 1 or 2 o'clock. And between that, you should have somewhere between a 20 and 30% open rate. Guess what? That leaves 70% roughly that you still need to email to. And you do the whole thing again next month. But those that have opened your email that haven't unsubscribed, you want to tag those in your system as your kind of your hot list. And those are the ones that you're going to work over and over again. And you can really basically set up your system through MailChimp or Keep or whoever you're using. We prefer Keep, to automatically pre-write an email that goes out to them on a monthly basis. Hey, what do you have in your books this month for the month of May? Or it's the end of Q4. What do you have? And that's one of the big things that we'll be doing here after Thanksgiving is emails to asset managers, LinkedIn. Hey, what do you have in your books that you're looking to sell this quarter? We plan on being pretty busy the next few weeks. Now, the idea here, ladies and gentlemen, is that it does not be difficult. You're basically going to have the same thing. Hey, we're looking for stuff in a variety of metroplexes. Once a month, you should be doing this. Some people are doing this the first week and the third week. Some of the things about sending emails, you're not going to have a lot of responses the last week of the quarter because these asset managers are very, very busy. Coming up with reports, they're also busy on trying to close out stuff before they send it out. So do not send the last week of the month. It just doesn't make sense. The first and third weeks are the best time to send out. Now, let's talk about calling asset managers. Now, one of the things when you have an asset manager open your email, they should make your call list, or they make your LinkedIn list where you jump on LinkedIn and track them down on LinkedIn if you can, or you follow up with a personal email and say, hey, thanks for reaching out and open my email. Okay. Now, if you're going to dial for dollars, which is a very effective thing, and part of Note Weekend is that you get a link to watch us dial for dollars, our 4 or 5 hour, sometimes all day, one-day training thing. And we'll be doing this in December, dialing for dollars quite a bit off of our emails that we send out to asset managers. So, but anyway, if you're calling, you want to call between 10 a.m. and noon their time and 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. their time. Don't call at noon their time, because you know what? They're going to be out at lunch. They're not going to take phone calls. They're just not going to do it. So 10 a.m. to noon their time, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. that time. Now, if you're on the West Coast, you can wake up early and call on the East Coast. If you're on the East Coast, when you get home at night, there's still some time to call on the West Coast. You can make some of this stuff happen. The idea here is you can set up, if you got an email blast that goes out, set up using like Calendly or some sort of scheduling thing to schedule one-on-one phone calls throughout the week during your breaks, or when you can step away from your office or step away from your desk if you need to. But expect, if you're going to dial for dollars, expect to leave a lot of messages. I always say if you're dialing, making 50 phone calls, you're probably going to leave at least 14 messages. You're probably going to talk with at least 4 to 5 people. And out of those, you probably get one list. Now, that one list may have one asset, or may have a big list, 1,000 notes available for sale. But that's the thing to keep in mind. When you speak slow. I actually have a little sticky note I've had here on my computer for years when I dial for dollars, is to slow down. I get excited when I'm talking to asset managers. I think you would too. I already speak fast as it is, my energy, and rambunctious. Okay. So I literally have to slow it down and make sure that I leave my phone number twice. Okay. I speak very clearly. Hi, I'm looking for the person in charge of special assets. I believe that's you, RJ. I want to thank you for listening to my voicemail. I'm looking to buy non-performing notes on residential and commercial assets. On the resi side, we're looking for really anything below $500,000 in value. On the commercial side, we're looking for small balance stuff below $5 million. We really like that $2 million and below asset class. If you got anything that's clogging up your books, I would love to talk with you. I can be reached back at 512-585-3810. 512-585-3810. My name is Scott Carson with WeCloseNotes.com. We've been buying debt for over 20 years and would love to talk with you, see how we can create a win-win-win scenario. We've got, like I said, a variety of call scripts in our 3-day workshop. If you watch the at least the 4-hour Me Calling Asset Manager, you'll hear that script or something very similar to it over and over and over. When I first started off, I literally wrote it all out so I could repeat it word for word. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, don't call 10 banks and give up. You got to realize many of these asset managers, they get bombarded with phone calls, and it all comes down to who's the squeaky hinge, who's the squeaky wheel. And the squeaky wheel gets oiled. So calling back and calling back. So track your phone calls on Excel or some sort of CRM. Track when you call, who you left a message with, what number you dialed, and just follow up, follow up, follow up. It's one of the most important things. It's also, a lot of people do not do this. They'll do it once and they'll give up. You have to do this on a monthly basis to give you some sort of momentum rock and rolling. And if you understand, hey, first, third weeks, the calling, the first, third week, send emails, and the follow-up. It's all about an email to a phone call to LinkedIn, or an email to LinkedIn if you can't make the phone call. And tracking these people down on LinkedIn, communicating that way on there, it's a great resource. Or their colleagues. So many times we've found an asset manager on LinkedIn, and they put us in touch with somebody different on there. And that's why LinkedIn is a gold mine when you use it. So check out our Calling Asset Manager video by going to that link there below in the manual there. bit.ly/calling asset managers, and you can watch me dial for dollars for a few hours. Questions, comments, concerns regarding dialing, contacting asset managers, what to say, what not to say. Great. All right, let's move on. Now, our next part here of Note Weekend is talking about the different note markets and pricing models. Now, we get into pricing models, it's a guide. It's not hard black and white fact, because there is some stupid shit going on out there in the note space. We'll get to that. But if an asset manager won't give you pricing, or a seller won't tell you pricing, there's some things you can do to get in the right ballpark and see if it makes sense. Otherwise, I often will end up saying, man, you're smoking crack, pass the crack pipe, please. Okay. So, when you're reaching out to asset managers, it all comes down to what you're saying. Do you pass the smell test? I've had students that have gotten deals their first phone call, which is weird. I've had other ones that shoot themselves in the foot all the time because they're doing stupid stuff by posting their social media everywhere on the email versus just being short and sweet. So one of the big things is make sure you have a complete LinkedIn profile. Make sure it says something about real estate investing. Make sure it's complete. Okay. Make sure you don't have a glamour shots image there. Something that looks normal, looks professional, talks about real estate. You got to pass the smell test, because an asset manager is often, that's where they're going to go first on LinkedIn to see if you look like you know what you're doing. And if you have a website's really required these days. Doesn't need to be anything fancy, but make sure it's not a Wix website. I mean, you can have a Wix website, but make sure get rid of the Wix branding. Don't try to go cheap. Here's the one thing that comes in that pays you exponentially. If you do a little bit above and beyond what everybody else is doing, you're going to stand out in a good way from asset managers. That means having an executive summary written up that you can email in, some of the case studies, some of the deals that you've closed before. If you're marketing and sharing content on your LinkedIn profile on a regular basis, that will help you pass the smell test. Okay. Having your vendor team, even if you're brand new, having part of your executive summary talk about you and what you've done or what you're doing, what your focus is. And then also on the second half of it, hey, here's our team, here's our servicing company, here's our attorneys, here's our vendors that we use across the country. And if you've got some national vendors that are doing stuff across the country, that will alleviate maybe some of the fears of you being a brand new investor. Look, we've all been real estate investors for years. You're going to be a real estate investor much longer than 1 month or 1 year, hopefully. Many of us have been around for a long time. So use that leverage. Hey, if you haven't bought a note or fix and flip, but you bought it your own residential property 5 years ago, say you've been a real estate investor for 5 years, because that's really the truth. Okay. So you have to pass a smell test. Look at some of the different websites out there. If you need a website resource, let me know. We've got a guy that does an extremely affordable for note investors out there, and he really cranks them out pretty easily. He's got kind of a cookie cutter thing that he plugs and plays a lot of things or tweaks things up for you, but we've got some resources to help you pass that smell test. Okay. But when you start looking at note markets to buy in, obviously popularity of a market is going to affect the price of it. I'll give you an example, like Miami compared to Tallahassee. Okay. Miami is a much more popular market than Tallahassee, Florida, unless of course you go Florida State Seminoles, because Miami is much a bigger market. You get what I'm saying? Austin, Minnesota, not quite as attractive as Austin, Texas. It gets damn cold in Austin, Minnesota. All right. So popularity is going to have some effect on pricing. Market values, obviously higher price markets are going to affect, you're going to have less affordability. Look like San Francisco. Not much stuff is affordable there in the Bay Area. So I don't buy a lot of stuff there, because for what I would buy one ramshackled house, I could buy half to a full street in Kansas City, Missouri. You know what I'm saying? Foreclosure timeframes will also affect it. Look at what happened in Vegas. Vegas has basically stopped foreclosures through the end of the year. Well, that means we're going to see more stuff and more popularity to buy there starting here in 2022. Same thing looking at like a great example would be South Carolina. South Carolina takes a year to foreclose, so it's not as popular as North Carolina. All right. Population is an important thing. Avoid the small ass rural towns. Yes, you might be able to get a heck of a deal on a good looking property, but unless you have carnal knowledge of that city, stay away from it. I like to stay in cities that are at least 50,000 and greater, especially starting off. As you develop your teams or as you grow outside of the bigger markets, yes, you can go down to smaller markets. Let me give you a great example. I grew up in a small town in South Texas called Ingleside. All right. When we first moved there, it's like it was 3,500 people. Now it's got 10,000 people. It's still small. I wouldn't recommend buying there unless you live there or you have friends or family in there. Now I know that area like the back of my hand, so I'm not afraid to buy there. Anything I see there. Now it's right across the bay from Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, larger, 300,000 plus person city, if not more. I mean, it's about 500,000 around in Nueces County, that neck of the woods. Not a bad market, but you've got to, that's the thing. Stay away from the smaller cities, especially if it takes 30 minutes or longer to get to a spot. It's going to take 30 minutes or more for your rehab crews, less buyers, less rehabs, less people focused on buying in the smaller cities. One thing I do look at is I look at colleges. Now, colleges, most of them are going back to normal, back to school on campus, especially when you have football games or basketball games. Things are getting back to normal on campus, but there are some of those that are still just doing remote learning. So keep that in mind, as people, not everywhere has gone back. And a lot of these smaller universities or cities where the university is the main source of income and employment, stuff like that, they're struggling because the students aren't back yet. So keep that in mind. Inventory, it all comes down to what's available specifically. Like I say, defaults are varying across the country. Some cities are seeing more. I'll give you a great example. You're going to see more defaults in Texas, in Dallas, and Houston than you're going to see in Austin. All right. You're going to see more defaults in, say, Columbus or Toledo or Dayton, Ohio, than you would say Cincinnati. Not that Cincinnati's not going to have some stuff, but just keep in mind, this is why we try to focus on states and picking, states that have several larger markets on it. Now, like Mississippi has one city that's larger than 100,000, Jackson, Mississippi. And you got to be careful in Jackson too, because of the crime and gangs in Jackson. So got to know markets and do some research on it. Sometimes if you're going to be buying in a specific state, it is worth taking a weekend, jumping on a Southwest Airlines flight, flying in there and meeting with a realtor or meeting with people locally in a market or two and understanding it and meeting people eye to eye. I think it's a great thing to do. We've done that multiple occasions, and it helped us really feel comfortable with different markets out there. Then we never had to fly back. The most expensive nut markets, California, Arizona, Texas, Nevada, Georgia, they're all pretty expensive because those are popular destinations. It's also, Texas is one of the most popular because of the fast foreclosure time frame, fastest to foreclose in a nation in basically 21 days. Georgia, second fastest at 30 days. Anything on the West Coast, for the most part, like I talked about, Oregon, Washington is going to be expensive. Just don't see a lot of stuff that makes sense there for you. Now, where we see the most amount of inventory at as of now, this may change. Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. Florida is really creeping up in there as well. I don't mention New York or New Jersey in here. Yes, we see a lot of stuff in New York, New Jersey. I just don't buy there, so I don't post that in the top 10. All right. Pricing models. This is one of the hardest things for people to understand when it comes down to what do you offer on a note. Okay. Here's the thing. There's basically three basic models. You have performing, where the loan's never gone non-performing. The banks aren't going to sell performing paper that's never gone non-performing at a discount. They're going to sell it at par. Now, what does par mean? Par means if they owe 100, they're going to sell it 100. There's no discount. And if the mortgage is at 1%, 2%, 3%, that's a 3% return if you've got cheap money. Not worth pursuing. Now, what we do pursue are performing notes that were once non-performing. And that means that it was non-performing at one point, and the borrower has now made 6 to 12 months of on-time payment. Now, they still could be behind payment-wise for 6 to 12 months, but they paid 6 months in a row or 12 months in a row. I will look at that. I'll often consider that a performing note, especially if they paid 12 months on time and they're getting back on track. You can buy those type of performing notes somewhere between an 8 and 50% return on investment based on the cash flow, the price, the yield on that stuff. That's not too hard. If you're looking to make 15% or a double-digit return, target investors who bought non-performing notes and then got them reperforming. Okay. Non-performing notes where there's negative equity. Here's what we do. Okay. Non-performing note with negative equity means they're upside down. They owe more than the property's worth. Basically, if you're buying a one-off note, portfolio is a little bit different, but you're buying a one-off note, anything over 60% or $60,000 in value, you probably need to be in the 60s on a one-off note, provided foreclosure process is at least halfway done. Now, foreclosure process is 90% of the way done. It's going to foreclosure next month. You better expect to spend somewhere around 70, even sometimes mid 70s, because all the heavy lifting is done on a non-performing note. But start working that stair-step model down. So anything really 60,000 and plus, they're going to want somewhere around 60% or less of the UPB or fair market value, whichever is less. So if they owe more than 60% of the fair market value. If it's in the 50s, 50,000 value, you're going to be paying roughly about 55% of the fair market value, provided they owe more. In the 40s, 45%. If it's in the 30s, 35%. Anything below $30,000 in value, don't pay more than 25 cents on the dollar, because it takes work and you have less margins on that lower value. That doesn't mean you can't make great money. I mean, we bought a lot of low valued assets in Michigan and Ohio that performed phenomenal that we picked up for just a few grand. Okay. But that's where you got to look at, is if my investment, when I'm paying for this asset, this is also why we focus on occupied asset needs less rehab. Okay. A roof on a small valued asset will wipe out all your profit. And air conditioning will wipe out all your profit. Okay. Occupied assets, yeah, I don't mind paying $1,500 to clean out, quick paint job, something like that. But this is why we keep occupied assets. We want to work with the borrowers in some sort of fashion. Okay. So non-performing where there is equity, I'll give you a great example. Let's say a $150,000 valued house, they owe their payoffs 100. Bank's going to want probably, or the seller's going to want somewhere between 80 and 95% of either UPB or payoff, depending on what that legal balance is compared to UPB. If there's a ton of equity above the payoff, they're going to come close to that. But we've even seen sellers wanting above UPB recently because of all the equity. Okay. Contract for deeds. On the non-performing side, 35, 40, maybe 50 cents on the dollar of UPB. If it's performing, 60, 70 cents of the UPB, and there's often a ton of equity above a contract for deed because you've seen appreciation, and oftentimes the borrowers now have equity and they're willing to fight for it. So if you got a borrower who's back on track, paying on time with a contract for deed and there's a ton of equity, that's a pretty good solid investment for potentially a performing note. Okay, junior liens, we don't buy seconds. Junior liens are just overpriced. We get phone calls all the time from second lien investors like, I want to buy a portfolio. Well, how much do you have to buy? Oh, 50. Well, it might get you one now. It might not get you 10. If the market's changed than it was. Unfortunately, there's people out there teaching the junior lien space like it was 8, 9 years ago, and that's just not the case. There's people in the second lien space that haven't bought a second lien in years, okay, because the market's changed, but they're still teaching like it used to be. So I just avoid the second lien space if are you out there. It's easy to raise capital in the first lien positions and contract for deeds anyway, okay? Commercial. If you like commercial, assets, you need to understand the specific asset class of that asset. So like if you're interested in self-storage, you need to go understand how self-storage works as far as the cash flow, the operation side of that, because it's a whole different bidding process on that space. You need to do your due diligence, because here I'm thinking commercial assets, you need to know the cash flow, you need to know rent. You're not always going to get the rent rolls when it comes to commercial. Now, residential is pretty easy to jump on a Rentometer or Zillow to figure out rent rates or values. With commercial, it's all about the cash flow to figure NOI, cap rates, and then values on that stuff. So you need to understand the individual asset classes if you're interested in that. Okay. If somebody mentioned that they're interested in getting more information about the website guy, drop me an email at scott@weclosenotes.com. That's scott@weclosenotes.com, and we're glad to refer any vendor out to you guys. Okay. All right. Occupied assets, we've talked about this before, have a little higher percentage versus vacant assets because usually less work is being done, right? Or you have less rehab because it's usually in better condition. If it's a vacant asset and needs work, it's going to be a lot better, but you've also got the headache of having to rehab and get the property back up in most cases. Now, here's the thing. If you're instead of the fix and flip side, you're more of a landlord space. We all know you don't have to rehab the property like you're trying to sell. You can get it up to a decent level to rent it, which is going to usually be inferior to trying to sell the asset off. So keep that in mind, whatever your strategy is. If you don't mind having rentals in a specific market, that's great. Just know your numbers and go from there. I'm a big believer too that you need to know too what the low level side, what the basement or the floor level for rents in an area before you get to the ghetto. I'll give you a great example. Michigan, Columbus, Ohio, Detroit, anything below $500 a month in rent is going to be very rough and really not a very good time frame. You might need to have 2 guns going there with a bulletproof vest to collect. So anything above 500 in the city, like here in Austin, anything below $1,000 a month in rent, it's probably going to be a rougher part of town. And many of these major cities have seen 30, 40% increase in rents over the last 12 months too. We've seen 40% increase here in Austin, Texas, in a lot of areas. So knowing your base flooring level, what rent is, what good assets are versus crap assets, that's important for you too. Okay. Occupied assets, you'll have more exit strategies for modification, deed and lieu, workouts, short sales, loan assumptions than you would in a vacant asset, where it's basically the deed in lieu or foreclosure. Okay. Also, less expenditures on occupied because of the good condition. Like I said before, you don't have to replace usually a vacant asset, you're going to replace 1, if not 2, of the major systems, whether it's heating, air conditioning, or plumbing, roof, foundation in a lot of cases as well. And you're going to make a bid when you're bidding into the bank or the seller. You're usually going to make a percentage of the UPB. Okay. We as investors, we have to know what that number is compared to fair market value, if it makes sense. Obviously, this is the balance of the bank mindset versus the fix and flip mindset. Okay. So make your bid, but then also one of the most important things is make sure you look at taxes owed. You can jump on a website, Netra Online, or go to the county of every property you're going to make a bid on, look at the taxes owed and make your offering minus taxes owed. And that's your final number. Now, yes, they may counter back. It all depends on the equity and what kind of percentage. But if there's like $500 owed in back taxes and you're buying a $100,000 asset, yeah, don't worry about it. But if there is $5,000 or anything really over $1,000, we really look to discount that off our bid just in case. So if we do get stuck having to buy that note and then paying the taxes, that we're still at a good investment to value. Any questions, comments, concerns about some of the different pricing, note markets and pricing models out there? We'll get more into some of the stuff here in a few minutes too. All right, we've gone through the kind of the finding side, the first F of Note Weekend here, how to find assets. Now we're getting into, okay, contacting banks. We're targeting, using LinkedIn or email blast to reach out to asset managers. We know which markets we're looking at. We're starting to get some tapes in. Oh my God, how am I going to be able to pay for what I'm bidding on, right? So here's the thing. Let's go through some basics when it comes to funding. Funding options for your deals. You're going to need to send a wire. Banks aren't going to accept a check, okay? They want wires. And one of the beautiful things about note investing is they're not usually taking earnest money deposits. They're usually wanting one wire for the full asset or the full trade. Now, if you're, in some cases, we've done some rolling closes. What does that mean? Say we're closing on $600,000 of assets. Well, we may set up where one week it's 200, the next week it's 200, then the third week it's 200,000 as we close on a portfolio. Some fund, when the bigger the trades you buy, especially some of these funds, they'll allow you to do that, and that gives you some flexibility in raising capital versus have to come to the table with 600,000 one. It gives you 3 weeks really. You fund 200, you fund a third of the portfolio. It's one contract for that third, and second contract for the second third, third contract for the third closing. We've done that on a regular basis, which is pretty cool. Also, sometimes we've been able to negotiate where we had 6 months of due diligence to go back in and swap out assets when to get a deal to close. Okay, but first and foremost, wire transfers. You're going to need to send a wire. So this is why you want to either set up a escrow account with a real estate attorney if you're brand new, or you may have a separate account that money comes into that you then wire out to. Okay, you can't go to a bank and you can't go to a bank and get a note to get a loan to buy a note most of the time. Now you can get lines of credit if you've got good credit. You maybe get a home equity line of credit or personal line of credit. If you've got an entity that's been around for 2 years and you've built some credit with that, get some lines of credit. I would highly recommend that you check out getfundable.com. Merrill Chandler and his team, they do a great job of working with our students and clients to help them weaponize, as we like to say, their personal and business credit and help them build the credit up. It's not, hey, get signed up for a credit card, we're going to take 30%. It's not like that at all. But check it out. The link on there, go to getfundable.com. They also have a boot camp pretty regularly, a 2-day boot camp starting at $97. Well worth it. It's one of 2 events that we highly, highly recommend that every one of our students attend to be more educated, more knowledgeable. And that's the thing. The lending world is changing. There's a lot of myths out there, and Merrill does a good job debunking those myths and showing you where the world of credit is and getting lines of banking and credit is all that these days. Okay, so check it out. We use a lot of self-directed accounts. Investors use their self-directed IRA, their Roth, their traditional, their SEP, their HSA, their solo 401k plans to fund deals. We partner with them on that. I mean, you can use those things to buy notes for your own portfolio as well. The one thing, if you're buying with your own self-directed IRA, you can't go and really touch that stuff. You can't service it. So you got to make sure you've got a third-party servicer and vendors to handle everything. You also got to make sure you've got enough stuff in there ongoing for expenses. If you're buying a note for 50 grand, all you've got is 50 grand, you may run into some trouble because you don't have enough for foreclosure in your account. So keep that in mind when you're using your account. Now, if you're using other people's account, hey, make sure you may want to have a little bit extra funded on top of what you're paying for the note to cover those type of workout and foreclosure costs. We did a video on different IRA types and accounts there as well on that link there. Other people's money. Look, people use checking account savings. We have people that will wire funds from their savings accounts or their checking accounts to their entity accounts to fund a deal. It's totally legal. Just make sure you've got a lending agreement and all that is lined up. And then you're also securing the investor's money in one form or fashion, whether it's they're codenamed on the assignment of mortgage, they co-own the LLC, there's a UCC, or you're doing a collateral assignment to secure their investment. It's not difficult. Any one of those things will work. Some people like it pretty easy. Others sometimes will just want, hey, if you got another property, can I slap a lien on that other property so get collateral for this loan that we're giving on this note? Collateral assignment is pretty easy. That's basically, some people will leverage a portfolio of loans as collateral for a new loan. It's basically a collateral assignment is once you're closing on the collateral, the loan file, then it goes to your lender, the person that has lent you the money, and they hold it until you've paid that back. Okay. Banks will not lend on notes, but here are some of the cool things that some of the bigger trades will do. Some banks will joint venture with you on commercial deals. If they're selling a commercial note, they know it needs work. We've seen this happen on a couple occasions. We're literally on the loan sale application or the loan sale agreement. The bank says, hey, if you're looking for partnership on this, please outline what you're doing. And so we've in the past had banks that would finance us the note as long as we brought the rehab money, and then we partnered on the deal, and it was a win-win across the board. Also, if you're buying an asset, a residential note or a commercial note that's over $1 million in balance, a lot of times, sometimes you get the bank to carry that. And if the operator of that asset or the borrower is getting ready to is walked away or surrender the property, the bank will oftentimes want to not lose $1 million on their balance sheets. But it's very easy now for them, like, okay, we'll carry financing if you're taking over, you have a team that's operating that asset, take it from the non-performing side of the asset class to the performing side of their portfolio. So don't be afraid if you see something that makes sense like that to ask. You never know, you never get what you don't ask for, right? The thing about doing that is if you're buying commercial assets, for them to be willing to carry, you've got to have some experience or some team. So, we've done it with no experience before, as long as we had a partner that was operating, we used that as part of our executive summary and our management team on those assets. Okay. Hard money lenders will not lend on note deals. I get it. It's confusing because they're actually creating loans. They're creating paper, but hard money lenders make their money in the points that they charge, the 2 to 4 points they charge. And a point is 1% of the loan amount. Okay. So if somebody's doing a $100,000 loan and a hard money lender is charging 3 points, that means they're charging 3% of the loan as a fee to them. That's $3,000. So they make their points, and they also make the difference in the yield in the interest rate. They may be borrowing the money from an investor at 6%, but charging 12%. So they're making 3 points plus that 6%. And they want to make points on these loans every 6 to 12 months. They don't usually want to be tied up for 24 or 12 months or longer. So you will rarely find a hard money lender that understands that. We've actually had better luck dealing with the actual, like the principal of the hard money lender who's an investor, and we ended up using, they've funded deals outside of the hard money fund. Okay. Now they may have, the nice thing about hard money lenders, they may have notes for sale. We've seen this happen quite a bit. We get hard money lenders that call us, hey, we got some notes at 12%. We want to sell at par. Okay. Not really interested at buying at par. I don't want to deal with rehabbers, but we've bought some hard money loans at discounts because the hard money fund was going out of business and they needed to liquidate the portfolio. That's worked out pretty well. Okay. Make sure when you are buying that you are well below 70% of as is value or as is fair market value. Okay. I don't want to be above really 60, 65%. Yes, I know if you're buying a one-off asset, we talked about, hey, maybe you need to be at 60, 65. That's where you need to know the asset. Okay. But we always want to be below 70% for the most part, unless it's something that's, hey, it's going to foreclosure in 2 weeks or it's going to foreclosure in a month. In that case, you're going to want to talk to the attorney and make damn sure it's on the docket to go to foreclosure. But we've bought assets where foreclosure happened 2 weeks later, $85,000 asset. We're in at 42. We sold it the next 2 weeks at 85. We made 40 grand roughly like that. That would be one where I would have gone higher because it was going to foreclosure, but we just lucked out on that. But this is why always review your taxes out. Always check that on the front end. That's usually a big sign in your due diligence. When you're looking at taxes owed, you're going to look and see who the borrower is on your spreadsheet, or tape, as they call that, tape. Or, and then comparing it, who is the borrower on the county records. If the names don't match, okay, it could be a red flag for it. If the names don't match, now if it's a contract for deed, the names aren't going to match. Your borrower on the contract for deed isn't going to show up as the owner of the property on the record. Okay, because the contract for deed still has the seller. Like I have contract for deeds where it shows my entity being owner, even though we have borrowers that are on the mortgage. But on our first lien, the owner of the property's name should be the same person that's on the mortgage that you're buying. Now, if the name is changed, it may have been quick claim deed over or deeded over. Somebody may take over payments. Usually, what it is though is that property has gone to tax sale. So you need to call the county and actually talk to me. Hey, I need to check to see if this property is going to tax sale, if there's a pending tax sale. And then it will vary on if there's redemption rights or tax certificate or deed or whatever. So check that out. Okay. Always, always, always have a licensed realtor or get your values from a broker price opinion, a BPO. That's what BPO stands for, a broker price opinion. As a realtor going out, BPO will cost you $125 to $150 for an external BPO. Okay, external is where it's just the outside, because you're not going to get interior access most of the time with notes. Okay. Now, if the property is listed for sale, great. Yes, then you'll have interior access, but most of the time, you're not going to have internal access. You got to go off it, or you have a realtor who pulls a comparative market analysis, but they actually drive by that property first. Any realtor could pull a CMA on a property, and that will just give you, it's more like an AVM. If they've never driven by the property, they're not comparing true comps to comps. A comparative market analysis will show listings, properties for sale, properties sold, and properties pending that are comparative to your asset. So careful on a CMA. I'll give you a great example. We got a BPO in yesterday. Somebody was working on a student of ours, and that when it had one asset, was 30 miles away. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was skewing it because of the most highest valued asset. It was $20,000 higher than the other ones. I'm like, you have to kick this one out. It's not worth this, because 30 miles away, that's another city over. That's not a true comparative market. I mean, yes, it was kind of a rural asset in Michigan and area, but still 30 miles away, that's not a true comp. You want to be relatively close. Gotta look at those things. Sometimes sellers will get a little crazy out there. Always before you fund, make sure you have something to put eyes on. Yes, I'll give you a great example. If I'm looking at online, and you're going to do this at first, there's upfront due diligence and back-end due diligence before you fund. But as you're getting ready to make an offer, you're not going to spend a ton of time. You shouldn't be spending any money on due diligence until you've got a signed contract. So how do you pull values? Well, Zillow, Trulia, stuff like that. If you see values and I see where the picture shows like 6 months ago, okay, pretty good. But 6 years ago, you better sure as hell make sure it's still there. Okay. I'll look at stuff about a year old, but I still will always have a realtor drive by or somebody drive by, take photos of the property to make sure it's in good condition, make sure it isn't burnt up or been washed away, or, if we're not in Kansas anymore with a tornado or anything like that. Okay. Always have the person pulling your values, put eyes on the property. There is a service called NARRPR, National Association of Realtors, Real Property Reports.com, that any realtor can access from anywhere, and they can pull RPRs on any property across the country. Doesn't mean it's accurate because they didn't see it, and it's based off just sold. So while that's maybe a good initial price or valuation, still put eyes on it before you fund. You can always reduce or fade your bid. If you see online values or what the seller shows the value being, say 150, and you come back, it's really only worth 100. You can fade your bid. Just provide the proof of why it's worth 100. The two houses next door burnt down, or it's a lot of foreclosures, or the comps are way skewed from 50 miles away. Okay, just provide that proof. If the seller won't see that with common sense, then just kill your bid and move on. But make sure you have a true value. That's one thing. Your taxes and your values are two of the most important things that you need to verify. Obviously, make sure you budget in foreclosures, taxes, workout costs. What we do is we'll budget roughly on average $5,000 in workout costs, $3,500 on average for foreclosures, $1,500 for servicing. We won't use it. Like in Texas, I could foreclose for $1,000 roughly. So that still gives me $4,000 above, but I won't always use it. Like in some, we have about a 70% workout percentage. So I know I'm not going to use most of that money. So I will rotate it. And sometimes you will use more than others you will, but this is why we budget that in. You're going to spend probably $500 across the board on assets that you get approved. Once you get approved, then go to a loan sale agreement and you sign a contract, then you're going to be paying for a BPO and title report. And obviously your day in, day out marketing costs. Maybe you need to pay $50 to somebody to take some photos, or you're paying $125 for a BPO. There's some things your time is worth something, but that's what we look at. $500 up front for marketing, for due diligence, $5,000 roughly mixture, plus taxes. Taxes is separate from those workout costs. Okay. One of the things that we always tell our investors, and this is true, there's basically 5 things that are going to protect your investor, your funding source. One is that you're buying only first liens. Sorry for anybody that's looking for seconds. Buying only first liens will save you a lot, because you'll be in a first lien position. The only thing that really wipe you out is taxes or not doing anything. Okay. You're buying below 70% of as is value. Okay. There's plenty of equity there that you can foreclose on, take the property back, or sell it to somebody else, let them take it over. You're going to use professional servicing company for the day in or the week in, week out, and monthly servicing and statements, and attorney teams to help you to foreclose if it gets the foreclosure process worked out. You're going to put insurance on the asset, forced place insurance in case the borrower doesn't have any. Okay. Then obviously checking title. You're going to check title. You're going to check the collateral files, making sure there's not anything outstanding liens that will tie you up from being able to accept a deed in lieu or foreclosing. And then collateral files, making sure that you have all the documents that are needed to foreclose: the original deed, the note, all the assignment of mortgages that show the transfer. Anytime a note's been sold, there'd be an assignment of mortgage, and any allonges that show the transfer, the endorsement of the mortgage from the previous mortgage company to your company. Okay. And for every time a note is sold, there's an assignment of mortgage that gets recorded to the county and allonge. Now, what is an allonge? It's just an endorsement. What used to happen is that banks held on to all their original mortgages. And when they sold a note, it's like a check. They would just an IOU. So they would just endorse the back of the mortgage, last page of the mortgage, over from their institution to you or to the seller. Well, obviously, as the mortgage business has grown, and banks aren't holding on to their mortgages. They have them in warehouses. So now they've created that last page. It's called an allonge, which is just like you endorsing the back of a check. It's a one-page document. It's not even notarized. It's just signed by the owner, transferring it to you. The assignment of mortgage, though, is recorded and may even have two witnesses or one witness, and that's got to get recorded to the county. That's got to be notarized. Okay. And like I said before, banks, note sellers, they don't want you to put earnest money up. If you have somebody tells you need to put up like thousands of dollars at non-refundable in earnest money, that's a joker broker or it's a realtor who's trying to act in a note sale. That just doesn't happen. Yes, on larger trades, we've had to put maybe 50 grand up in earnest money or soft deposits to show for due diligence or things like that. That's usually fully refundable up to a point. You have a due diligence time frame where you can cancel for any reason, and then you have a hard time frame that if you cancel, you're gonna get blacklisted, or you put up any deposit, it goes hard, and if you cancel during that time, you don't get it back. Careful. Everybody says very short due diligence time frames with hard. Once you put it up, it goes hard. Do not deal with people like that. And you see some of those unscrupulous people out there just trying to, screw investors over and take your hard-earned money. Don't do that. Another thing too, some sellers will want you to fund before you review the collateral files. Now, you're not going to get the hard physical collateral file. Due diligence is going to exist of basically them sending you a scanned file, and you got to look through that and understand it. We'll do we've got some podcasts and episodes on reviewing a collateral file, but never ever fund before you get electronic copies. If somebody tells you, "Oh, we will deliver electronic copies after funding," do not fund. That's a red flag that they may not have them, or they may not be complete of any sort of things. And then once you've funded, there's a lot less motivation for them to help clear those things up. So do not fund without getting electronic copies of the collateral files. Okay. Let's take we'll take a quick, let's do this. Let's take our midday break here because we're getting to about halfway. So let's do a 27-minute break and come back half past the hour at 11:30 my time. It's 4 minutes after the hour, so 26 minutes to take a quick little break. Let you run, grab a cup of coffee, bio break where you need to be, and be prepared because we're at the halfway point here, and let you get up and stretch, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes.